let's say you're 50 years old and let's say you live until you're 85. So that's 35 years. And then let's say on average, you go to the bathroom 8 times a day. So 8 times a day times 35 years, you're going to be doing 100,000 squats over the course of your life, whether you like squats or not. The older you get, the harder they're going to be. So why not do some squats? Learn the proper technique, get a weight or a kettlebell and then just squat, have a little bit of weight on as you're holding and things like that, like super simple things, doing push-ups on the counter. Like, oh, I can't get on the ground and do a push-up. Do push-ups on the counter, do push-ups against the wall. Like, it is so easy to do this these days and then move all throughout the day.
Hello, darlings, and welcome to Not Over, Just Different. I'm Natalie Ledwell, and I'm here to share deeply insightful and vulnerable conversations with you from people who are willing to open up and share what their journey's been like so that you can learn and be inspired to take action in yours. It's never too late to begin again or to see a new perspective. No matter what your dreams or goals are, you'll find inspiration and community here. It's time to rediscover yourself, reignite your passions, and make the next 50 years even more full than the first. Are you a woman in your midlife struggling with your weight? You've tried everything, the diets, the exercise, and nothing seems to be working. Well, my guest today, Holly Bertone, she is the host of Your Midlife Comeback Story podcast. She used to work for the FBI and she's a nutrition coach. She's going to explain to us why diet and exercise alone is not going to help to shift the pounds and how when we shift our mindset and the way that we look at life and ourselves, that's what's going to move those pounds. So enjoy. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast for this week. This week, we have a very interesting subject that we're talking about. And especially if you're a woman in your midlife who has done all the diets, has done all the exercise, and still frustrated with, your weight, the things don't respond the way that they used to. And my special guest, Holly Bertone, is here to help us understand why that is. So, Holly, welcome to the podcast. How are you, darling?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much, Natalie, for having me on the show.
Yeah. So, as we were just saying, there's so much more when it comes to our weight at this time of our life than just the diet and exercise. There's so much more to that. And I think that it's very few of us escape the added pounds at this time of our life. So why don't we start with why that is? Why is it that we put on this extra weight and it's so hard to shift?
Yeah, I honestly think there's a bunch of different reasons. We can look at going back to all of the stories and beliefs that we have from the past that are keeping us stuck. And, so we try to lose weight. And when I say stories, I'm thinking things like, even like shame is a really big one. Shame's a word that we don't like to talk about. Shame's one of those words that we just, push in the closet and lock the key and we don't like to let it out. But it's important because, if we put on those extra pounds, and especially midlife, we can blame our hormones, but there's a lot of other factors. And, our body starts to change and, whether it's we're at a healthy weight, but our body's just distributed differently and we're just like, clothes aren't fitting, we have to go up a size. Or, maybe we've put on 20 or 50 pounds and we're like, oh yeah, I really don't like the way I look. And, we have that kind of embarrassment about our body. So what we do is we focus on the number on the scale. And I have to take these pounds off. And we do it from this place of I have to. And I think it was Albert Einstein that said the future becomes what you feed it. So if you're feeding that future from a disempowering state and you're starting this journey from that place of, whether it's shame or guilt or, even we do all the things in midlife for everyone else. We've got our career and our families and our, spouse and kids and aging parents and community stuff and volunteer stuff and all of the things. And we don't have any time for ourselves. So what do? We sometimes blame them because we put their needs above our own. And isn't it their fault we did that? So we've got all of these factors going on. And then it's asking the wrong question. It's what diet do I need to go on? So, it's just like, oh, whatever my friend is doing or whatever I saw on Instagram or, you see a commercial on TV or whatever's the most popular diet that's going on. I think, oh, that one's going to work. So we focus on the diet, we focus on the scale, we focus on the number, And these are all of these external factors that are driven by these stories that, have these emotional components to them, and they're coming from this disempowered state. So we're setting ourselves up. I like to call this base camp cycle. And you make that commitment. You have that catalyst that, I've got a milestone birthday coming up, or, I've got some events coming up. I want to put on the fancy dress and I don't want to have to worry about my arms showing. I don't want to be embarrassed about my arms. So we have this catalyst, this event. We're like, I am going to lose the weight. So we focus on the number and we focus on how we're going to look. And we're starting at base camp. So that motivation is going to last about 2 weeks. And that's typically, 92% of diets fail. It's all about the New Year's resolution, right? We're going to stay on that excitement for about 2 weeks as we're climbing that mountain. And then what happens? An obstacle happens and gets in our way. And all of a sudden things become a little more difficult. And so that willpower, that discipline is going to last about 1 more week. And then what happens? If something gets even harder and we're halfway up the mountain and we're like, you know what? It's just easier to start again on Monday. And then Monday never happens. And we're right back at base camp. That's why I like to call it the base camp cycle. And again, 92% of diets fail. So 8% succeed. And yet we continue to rely on an industry that really just expects us to fail 92% of the time. So those are some of the conversations that I like to have.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is that, and we know that our thoughts and emotions are the frequency we send out into the universe. We know that our thoughts shape our reality, but when we are looking at going on a weight loss journey, if we're coming from a place of, and these are some of the things I heard you say, things like resentment, which I, very familiar with. I know when I was at the end of my marriage, my husband copped the blame for everything, including my weight. It's like, you want this lifestyle and I have to, step into this, and this is what happens. I can't keep up with that lifestyle and still have a slim body. So, so you're deflecting responsibility. You've got resentment, and a resentment not just for our partners, but for the life that we have. And I know that feeling of being on the hamster wheel, because you're saying going back to base camp, but I think it's worse than that. Like worse than when we started. Because,
Absolutely.
You feel like you failed. And so to soothe yourself, you drink that extra glass of wine, or you have that food that's not that good for you. So you've got that whole cycle going on as well. And I know a lot of us put on weight during the pandemic, and those pounds were really hard to shift. So this is what I hear you saying. So our mindset really is something that we need to focus on and get, honest with ourselves as to, what is my mindset right now? What are some of the common things that you see with women who are at this place that, this mindset is working against them? What are some of those thoughts that you're aware of?
Yeah. So we already talked about the shame and the guilt, and then things like, I'm going to reward myself. So I worked hard today. I used to be the chief of staff at the FBI. So I was working 12-hour days, coming home, taking care of my family. And I know I fell into that trap of, I just worked hard, and I was the one that always cooked. So I was like, I just need a break. I want to reward myself. Or the weekend came, I'm going to reward myself for making it through a hard week and, ordering pizza, or eating ice cream. And I was also one of those people where I couldn't just eat a few bites of ice cream and put it back in the freezer. I'd open up the pint of ice cream and my spoon, a few minutes later, my spoon would be scraping the bottom. So reward eating is really big. And, I think another big one is that, we grew up in the 80s and 90s diet culture. And so we grew up in where all it was, eat, these, humongous salads that, have some nutritional quality, but they don't have any substance to them. And then all of the low fat and the Diet Cokes and, the Weight Watchers and the counting points and the low fat snacks, the Snackwells. Remember the Snackwells? And we grew up, this has been ingrained in us for 40 years. And the Framingham study and the Ansel Keys, who perpetuated a lot of this, has been debunked, but it's not out there. It's not like, no one's talking about this. Everyone still believes that this is how we're supposed to lose weight. So, we go down this rabbit hole of needing to starve ourselves and restrict calories. And then we restrict the calories. They're like, oh, I'm going to have a cheat day. And the cheat day ends up eating everything in sight because you're starving and you're hangry, especially if you're working, an entrepreneur, you get that midday just absolute, because your body doesn't have enough food. So another big mistake is being able to eat the right amount of food that nourish your body. That's more protein and more fat. And all of the current research these days is 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight or per pound of ideal body weight. And again, the more protein, more fat, that's actually going to keep you full. It's going to keep you satiated. It's going to actually help you build stronger muscles. And those muscles are going to actually work for you, right? So you're not going to like bulk up like a bodybuilder. Your body's going to actually become more efficient to lose that weight. But everyone is so scared. Women are so scared to eat protein and fat these days. Like I said, because it's been ingrained in us for 40 years.
Yeah. Well, I know the importance of muscle because, it takes more calories to maintain muscle. So not only does it help to, raise your metabolism naturally, but it's also great support for bones and all of that, which is really important for us at this time of our life. Like we need to have a good foundation. Otherwise, in a few years, we're falling over, breaking a hip. We really need to think about this now before we get to that stage.
And I was going to say one more thing is speaking of falling and breaking a hip is strength training. Strength training is another big one that, again, we're either scared that we're going to, lift some muscles and we're going to look like Hulk Hogan, or we go into the gym and we're like so intimidated by all of the equipment. So it's just easier. Like, I'm just going to get those little 3-pound dumbbells that do absolutely nothing for you. Like we need to lift heavy things 2 to 3 weeks, 20 to 30 minutes, and they can be easy. Get some 10-pound weights or some 15-pound weights. These are things that you can do at home, or maybe some kettlebells or things like that, and squats, and I love this example. So let's say you're 50 years old and let's say you live until you're 85. So that's 35 years. And then let's say on average, you go to the bathroom 8 times a day. So 8 times a day times 35 years, you're going to be doing 100,000 squats over the course of your life. Whether you like squats or not. The older you get, the harder they're going to be. So why not do some squats? Learn the proper technique, get a weight or a kettlebell and then just squat, have a little bit of weight on as you're holding and things like that, like super simple things, doing push-ups on the counter. Like, oh, I can't get on the ground and do a push-up. Do push-ups on the counter, do push-ups against the wall. Like it is so easy to do this these days and then move all throughout the day. And we want to think about we're going to age. So how can we move to accommodate what we're going to be encountering, in our 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s? We want to be able to, go on an airplane, take fabulous vacations with our spouse or our friend, and hopefully someone would lift the suitcase up for us. But we want to be able to get the suitcase up on the thing. We want to be able to drive and then come back home and unload the groceries, put the groceries up on the cabinet without being dependent on someone, and these are the things so many women are saying, I can't think 15 minutes out because I've got all the fires going, let alone 15 years. But we need to have this longer term approach when it comes to our health.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what I also hear you saying is that it's a combination of we want to be combining mindset and the diet and the exercise. So what comes first? What do we focus on first?
Yeah. So I'd love to jump into my Rocky framework because that really is going to help us take those steps in the right order. And because so many people think the first thing I need to do is go do something. But again, back to base camp cycle, you've done the things and the thing gets hard and then it doesn't work anymore. So the very first thing I like to do, and I named this after what I call the best comeback movie of all time, Rocky original 1976. So R stands, so it's ROCKY, and R stands for rear view mirror. This is when you release and reclaim the past. And we can't get into our DeLorean and change the past. But what we can do is make peace and forgiveness with it. And that's peace and forgiveness with other people, peace and forgiveness with the situation, but most importantly, that peace and forgiveness with ourselves. A lot of women are carrying a lot of guilt. And that peace is really just going to give us this place where we can start from a fresh place. And, you talk about that mindset component to just release all of that baggage that we've had from the past. No blame, no shame, just peace.
Yeah. I mean, I would also say that R also stands for reframe.
Absolutely.
Because if we're still telling those stories that happened when we were a child from the place and pain that we experienced when we were there, then it keeps us tethered to that past.
Yeah.
And it's like it becomes our crutch or excuse for not being successful. But if you can reframe it, because multiple versions of that story are true. And it's like, well, which version of that story are you choosing to tell that's going to help to empower you to move forward, brilliantly in this part of your life? Or are you going to, keep tethered to that past event?
Yeah. And that is the whole point, is to break that tether. And part of what I did, I worked at the FBI, and the same thing as I do as a health coach, is looking at the past is going to predict our future. So, and unless we do something to change it. So that's an important step. And then, I like to say, own your ship with a P, like a boat. So I'll keep it G-rated. But this is personal responsibility. And I love to tell the story about when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was 39 years old. I thought that I was healthy, but obviously not. And so it wasn't a woe is me or why me. It was just, how did this even happen? And my doctor put her hand on my knee and she said, lightning struck. And I needed that peace in my life at one of the lowest moments of my life. But what it did was it took all the responsibility away from me, and it just placed this horrible disease on a random app. So I didn't make any changes in my life. I was still a sugaraholic. I still ate a lot of processed food. I still drank a lot of wine. I did all of the things. I still had a, 24/7 adrenaline junkie, stressed out, burned out lifestyle, at the FBI. Like, I did not stop at all. So, but now looking back, I'm like, okay, disease is end stage inflammation. We can't give it 100%. Like, if I do the thing, I'm not going to get sick. But what we can do is we can have agency over our life, and we can sure minimize those chances. Nutrition, lifestyle factors, our thoughts, our relationships, the toxins we surround ourselves with, time in nature. There's all of these things going back to the basics. Everyone says, the basics are what work. They work for a reason, but responsibility, it's not about the blame or the shame. It's from this point forward. You were talking about your divorce. When our marriage kind of had hit thermonuclear status, the very first thing that I did, I looked in the mirror and I took responsibility for my part in the marriage and my part in the divorce. And I showed up as a totally different human being. And my ex entrained all my energy. So instead of all of the blame and the resentment and all the crazy emotions that came out, I just stood in my power and I was like, I'm responsible for this too. So let's just figure it out. And he had nothing. He had nothing to grab onto. He's like, oh, okay, let's just figure it out. And I mean, it was still a divorce. It was still hard. But taking responsibility, it can change the trajectory of your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the same thing. It's like, what was my part in this? How did I show up in this?
Yeah.
And I think that when you can do it from that point, it does help you to navigate through a challenging situation a lot easier. Because, number one, you're owning your ship. But number two, it's helping you to, not make those mistakes again.
Yeah. And C is create your future self. And we kind of already talked about this, is looking at it not from a perspective of, I need to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks. It's, okay, how can I do the things today that my future self is going to thank me for? And all of those decisions, you're not going to see progress every single day. It's just like anything else in life. It's going to be up and down and all over the place. But when you can just keep that vision and keep focused on, I'm going to show up, I'm going to go walk, I'm going to go move, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to do the things. And my 80-year-old self is going to thank me for that, because those years come quick. And it's hard to think that far out, but those years come quick. So I know we kind of already talked about that one. So K is keep the vision, not the view. This is one of my favorite ones. Again, I put FBI hat on for this one too. And this is when the obstacles are going to happen 100% of the time. Whether it's a rainy day, the dog poops on the carpet, an argument with your spouse, you're running late, left the phone in the car. I mean, there's a million things. You get traffic, all the things, right? The obstacles are always going to happen every day. And when those obstacles happen, how easy is it for us to get triggered? And then when we're triggered, we reach for the comfort food. We're like all amped up and then we can't get a good night's sleep. And then we wake up, we're tired, so we're not going to work out. And then we're going to be craving comfort food. So it's just this vicious cycle. So K is keeping the vision, not the view, is being able to really just not eliminate the obstacles because they're always going to be there, but not let that stress hijack your life. And I got a perfect example of this. I was up at MIT, I was speaking, and I had back-to-back. So I was flying to MIT, had to come back home, and I had another speaking engagement. So my travel was tight. It was tight. And our flight was delayed 3 hours. And the FBI calls them tripwires. So I incorporated all the tripwires to make sure that everything is in place, that no matter what went wrong, I was good to go. And, so the flight is delayed. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I knew I was going to be fine. Like, their job is to get me to Boston, So I get out my laptop and I just start working. But the psychology major in me is observing everyone. And over the course of those 3 hours, people got more and more agitated. And they didn't know how to handle their stress. So they're either yelling at the flight attendant, nothing they can do. They just decided to yell at them. There was another group, they just would go to Dunkin' Donuts and get all the bagels and donuts. They were stressed, so they ate. And then the other group, 8 o'clock in the morning, went over to the bar and started drinking. So this is natural human reaction to a stress. But the reality is, they're going to get us on that flight and they're going to get us to Boston. It may take a few hours, but they're going to get us there. And there's nothing we can do. So when you have these tripwires in place, those daily obstacles don't bother you anymore and they don't send you spiraling.
And part of the reason I think that we put on weight, or definitely that I put on weight at this time, is because I haven't had healthy coping mechanisms when it comes to stress. I will have that extra glass of wine, or I will have that takeaway rather than cook a healthy meal. And so being able to, number one, recognize that this is what's happening. So identifying that this activity is connected to that. And then before you're even in stress, being able to identify what are the healthier choices that you can make. Go for a walk, call a friend, whatever that is, to be able to handle and navigate through that stress without doing something that's just going to compound and make it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got ROCK. So Y is really where we bring it all back home. Come back home to you, YOU. And, and this is, think of Wizard of Oz, right? It's been inside of us all along. Not a spoiler alert. Like, we know we have it inside of us. It's just it's peeling back those layers to get to that place where you really can come back home to yourself, to stand in your power. And not just that, but to be the example for everyone in your family, in your business, in your career, in your life. Because, we're looking at 2/3 of women age 40 to 60 are clinically overweight. So, we're not alone. There's a lot of people out there who are struggling. And then especially kids these days, whether it's your kids or your grandkids, we're seeing rises of obesity and diabetes and cancer in kids at astronomical levels. So when you can be that role model, others are going to entrain on you. They're going to say, I want what she has. People are going to start to say, like, wait, you're how old? They're actually going to think you're 10 or 15 years younger than you actually are. And you're going to start having this energy and this confidence and this vibrant and this sparkle. People are going to say, I want that. And, so it's not just you, it's your legacy as well. And that's what I really feel that it is, that legacy and being able to come back home to you and then share that gift with the world.
I agree, because I think there's a lot of women that we're at this time of our life where we do want to do something different. We want to step into something where we feel like we're making a contribution, that we're making a difference, that's something that's for us, that's going to fill our soul. And we want to have the most vibrant energy and motivation to be able to do that. Now, that's hard when we're still carrying, and I think this is more than just the weight. Yeah. Yes, weight, okay. But for me, it's about, no, I need some vitality. I want to be able to sit at my computer and do my work, but do it in a way that I know that I'm doing it at my best. So, for me, it's more about that than it is about, the weight. Obviously the weight as well.
And when this is doubted, you literally can age backwards. The productivity goes up, that clarity, that mind, being able to make, decisions and not being kind of stuck and frozen. So like you said, it's more than just a few pounds on the scale. It's everything in your life that, the confidence and, feeling better, feeling strong. You start lifting weights, you're actually going to feel stronger. Like that mental, just like, I actually feel stronger. That is a mental shift that there's not a lot of things in the world can duplicate that or replicate that, is lifting heavy things. Like I walk out of the gym, I'm like, yeah, I got this, it's going to be a great day. I can handle whatever comes my way.
Yeah. Holly, this has been very enlightening, and I know that this is super helpful for a lot of people. So if people wanted to find you or reach out, where do they find you?
Yeah, so the best place, since you're already on the podcast platform here, is to go to Your Midlife Comeback Story podcast. So wherever you're listening to the show, go to Your Midlife Comeback Story podcast. And feel free to pick your favorite. But if you're interested, I actually have episode 136 is Uncover Your Covert Weight Loss Using FBI Tactics. So just kind of a fun episode where I combine all the stuff that I learned at the FBI and what I do as a weight loss coach. So it's probably going to be your favorite episode. And then say hello on Instagram at holly.bertone. And yeah, let me know what you thought.
Awesome. Well, Holly, thank you so much for your time today. You are definitely a poster child for what it is that you teach. I've loved chatting with you today, and I'm so happy that you've been here. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, Natalie.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Not Over, Just Different. If you felt inspired by this episode, please subscribe and drop a comment below to let us know what you loved. My goal is to reignite the spark that you may think you've lost and cultivate a space where no matter what walk of life you are, you can step into the world with power and confidence. I would love to hear your reviews. It helps us to reach more incredible women like you. So until next time, keep growing, keep striving, and keep believing in the power of your potential. Here's to living your best life now.